Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Akulmach, and I welcome you all to this very interesting subject that we want to discuss today. It's about colonizing other planets. And to discuss this matter further, let me invite my friend from UK, Mr. Navalgund.
Good morning, CK. Colonizing other planets. Elon Musk says by 2060, 1 million people will have been taken to Mars. So what's that going to look like? Mars is several billion miles away, and it's not going to. We're not going to get there overnight. This isn't like jumping on a plane and nipping around the globe. What's it going to look like? What do you think?
Well, first of all, getting there is a big challenge as of now, as we see it. But I think a lot of development is going on right now, where you can get to Mars in less than a week. I mean, it's all question of propulsion. If you have a faster propulsion, you can get there faster. And since the current technology, we don't hear about it. So that is why our assumption is that it will take 8 months, 6 months to reach Mars. The idea of SpaceX is that they want to send 1 million men and women to Mars on a no return basis. That means there are no return tickets. All you have to do is get there, establish yourself, build a colony for yourself. There'll be no material provided. You can't take anything from Earth like cement or food or anything like that. No luxuries. So you have to build your cities, build your roads, and build your food, create your food. So I think these are the big challenges that first settlers will have to face. And of course, uh, they will also reproduce. They will have byproducts of their own genetic material, and they have to put those little beings into schools. So I think I
Exactly. Exactly. The byproducts are gonna be babies, basically. Um, and that's what the human race is all about. It's about, projection and improvement. And certainly that settlement will need, a new army coming through. They'll need rules, regulations, there'll be governance. I'm not too sure there'll be roads, to be honest with you, CK. I mean, maybe they'll just be, hovering around all over the place. There won't be roads. There'll be directions and there'll be robots taking you here, there, and everywhere. But it's a fascinating concept, isn't it? When you start to look at what would these teenagers, let's project another few years beyond the first colonization. And it's going to look, let's just say it's going to look something like your background. There's going to be a colony. I mean, it's going to be enclosed. Maybe it's got its own environment because Mars is a pretty nasty, toxic environment, as we keep being told. But we need to assume that an Eden type project is underway. And then these young adults, really, these teenagers, 14, 15 years old, are going to be toddling off to school. Again, are they going to be going to school? I mean, who knows? What would school be? So let's just think about the subjects. What would they be taught at sort of teenage levels, say 13, 14, 15-year-olds, the rebellious age of a teenager. And remember, they will have already gone on a few spacewalks. I mean, that's got to be a given, hasn't it? You know, they're on another planet. They're away from everywhere. They're already contributing to society. They may even be tilling their own garden somewhere, you know, growing carrots or space carrots or whatever we want to call them. So, what type of education system are we going to look at there? Would it look like the system we've got today, where you've got physics taught separately from maths and chemistry and a foreign language and astrology? Although we don't teach astrology, do we? But I bet we'll be teaching astrology then. But certainly mathematics, certainly physics, because those will be probably the grounding, the foundation stones for these future scientists, because this is who they are. They're a new colony. They're in the middle of nowhere. And the next place is to go to the middle of nowhere else, really. Find a black hole. So what? Come on, CK. I know you've got thousands of ideas bouncing through those ears. What do you think? What would an education system look like in 2074 on Mars?
Well, I just want to start my conversation by saying that instead of growing the space carrots, I think most likely the first settlers will be growing poo potatoes.
Potatoes. Okay, well, whatever. But they'll be
Right?
growing something. They'll be learning about food technology at a very early age, I expect.
Absolutely. And I think these are the two critical items that settlers will have to learn is how to grow because there is no topsoil on the Mars. So they have to find ways of developing a new topsoil because the topsoil has been taken for granted on Earth because it's been around for billions of years. But you have to create a topsoil so that you can sustain the life, grow your vegetables, etc. And the second thing is the universal language of mathematics, because if you don't know mathematics, you can't really construct anything. So I think the second challenge these guys would have to face is to construct their buildings which can protect them from the nasty environment. As you mentioned, Neville, the oxygen levels are different. It's not breathable air on Mars. The gravity is one third of Earth. To go to space from Mars is a lot easier than Earth. So you can have space missions organized by schools every once in a year or so. It may be much easier to launch students on a scouting mission in the orbit on Mars. So I think the first thing they have to learn is to generate their own food, generate their water, generate their oxygen. For that, the life sciences is the key subject. And the second subject would be mathematics so that they can construct their buildings.
Well, those are two huge subjects in themselves. And, let's remember that these young adults will have started like babies that we've got here. They'll be curious. They'll be encouraged to keep that curiosity because space is the frontier. As the Star Trek says, space, the final frontier, Stardate, ... Captain Kirk on his travels. They are the future Captain Kirks. So when you think of what you see on a Star Trek mission, all of these people are huge intellect. They've also got access to huge computers, huge databases. All the analysis is being done for them. They just need to interpret what the analysis is. They need to work together as a team. So from a very early age, all of this team building that businesses here absolutely crave for will be taught as a matter of consequence. There won't be any thought process that it won't be taught. And it will be taught actually because it will be taught because we're going to be doing things together. As you mentioned, food technology is going to be absolutely paramount. So from a very early age, they will be working in teams. And they'll be specializing in certain elements of that team. So it will look, even from a 4-year-old's perspective, it will look very, very different to an education system here. I mean, will it be a system? Will parents have direct responsibility, as we do here, to bring up your own children? Or will it be the role of the community? So in other words, parents are just, the pods, you're just the transitional arena. And now it's the community that takes care of everybody, even the parents. It's the community that's taking care of everybody. So it's a fascinating arena of what we would be creating, designing then. But now let's ask the question, why aren't we doing that now?
Well, Neville, I think in order to give better chances for the Homo sapiens or our civilization to succeed, we must have more than one option. So Earth is one of the option, and we must create another option, maybe multiple options. So if there are multiple options available, there is a better chance of survival. So I think we must colonize other planets within our solar systems, maybe Venus in future, Mars, and I think you must understand, or everyone should understand, that there will be mutation. So once the settlers go and settle on Mars, the species which evolve after a couple of generations will be different from the Earthlings. They will evolve differently, and you have actually raised a very pertinent question. Their education system will be totally different. I think, for after sorted out the issues related to food and construction, they have to also study material science, because once you know how to construct buildings on Mars, you need to get the material, because you can't get the material from Earth. All these materials are readily available on Earth. We have rock, we have gravel, we have sand, and we take it for granted. But on Mars, we have only sand. How do we produce concrete? So then the third subject would be the material science. They have to use the local material to build their houses. But I must make a very important point here now. We are doing all these studies, and during the growing years, the student minds are channelized. There is a bunch of literature, there is a bunch of music, there is a bunch of games as part of their curriculum. And if those things are missing on Mars, the race will have a totally different outlook. You know, just imagine after a couple of generations, if they don't have any literature to teach. I mean, they can't teach literature because there is nothing locally available. They will have to borrow it from Earth. So until unless they build their history, there'll be nothing called history lessons. There'll be nothing like a literature or a poem. So I think there will be a very strong need to evolve new mechanism on Mars to channelize brain. Otherwise, they will go haywire.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's what we say. It's a balanced education system. Really, you should have some art, you should have some drama, you should have linguistics, because it makes you a rounder person. But the interesting thing is, you've mentioned all of the things that we're going to be needing in Mars, because Mars is not Earth. You know, it's many miles away. And the point is, you can't just go to your local store and say, "Do you know what? I need a fish slice. I've run out of fish slices." You know, you will need to adapt to the local arena. And this is the thing about the education system. It will be fit for the purpose of the day. So we will undoubtedly be teaching how that word is actually done. Okay, might be very different than it is today, but we will be teaching what's relevant for the growth of the community. And I was talking to some very interesting educators recently, and they were saying that's what needs to be done today. We need to be teaching what's relevant and useful for the growth of the individual and the community. And of course, the community they're talking about is Earth, because that's our physical boundary. But the community that people will be talking about on Mars will be what? It won't have those really narrowly defined arenas of what's on Earth. You know, we do know there's a moon, we do know there's planets out there, but the thought process of actually physically traveling to them and teaching about that currently is somewhat remote. However, it will be a fact of life on Mars. As I said, they will probably have already been on their first spacewalk before they go to what we know today as secondary school. So it will be fit for purpose. And I think that's the key element here, fit for purpose.
Yes, Neville. In fact, having started this subject now, the new paradigm is now getting added to this whole subject. Imagine a situation where the first settlers will have a direction. They have a motive. They have to get blast off from the earth, They have to travel 6 months in the space, then they have to land, and then they have to start settling their buildings, they have to start setting up the society and so on, learn new things, etc. After a couple of generations, what will be the motivation of these people? For example, on Earth, it's a very clear motivation. It's the economy. Everyone for last 6,000 years is becoming part of a rat race, which is economy, and we
Yep.
call it rat
Yep.
race.
Yep.
What will happen on Mars? There'll be no money, there'll be no currency. How will these guys get paid for their labor? Because it's going to be all labor work for first few generations. Who will pay them? How they will generate revenue? I think these are the things which we do not have answers right now.
But there will be a thought process that it may not be the same as it is on Earth, but there will be some similarities. So the similarities. Imagine the the we need to remember that these are the very first settlers, a bit like the wild first settlers in the Wild West. Mars is just as far away from their home country. I mean, that's how different we are today. I remember my parents moved from Leeds to London in 1960, and that's the equivalent of moving from London to Sydney now, because it would take just about the same amount of time, and you're that far away. However, we're this connected. There was no in 1960. There was no internet. There's no video conferencing. Most people, if they had a phone, it was a dialed phone that took at least 50 seconds to actually physically go, to dial anywhere. And there wasn't this automatic calling around the world, but we've progressed as a society, as a community, massively. And that's what these people will be doing on Mars. But they'll be working as a community. Everyone will have a role. Everyone will have a place. Because every person on that planet will need to be fed and watered. So you are taking up resources. And now the whole concept of life as we know it, Jim, going back to the Star Trek reference, it's not life as we know it, Jim. And that's going to be the interesting thing, isn't it? But I'd like to make a comment about what's happening today. We do have these remote communities. We are exporting our education systems into areas where children are desperate for education. There are no jobs, so they really want to be entrepreneurial. These are the new, food technologists, the bioscientists in their local area. So why wait to experiment on Mars? Why don't we do it now? And I don't think that there's anywhere on Earth we're doing it now.
I think it will be slightly different than experimenting on Earth because, as you mentioned, that going from Leeds to London few years back is equal to going from London to Sydney. Um, but going to Mars is slightly different. There will be internet. We will be connected. That is given and for sure. But the problem with that mode of communication is that it'll be at almost like 40 minutes delay. So if I ask you a question on an arena like this, you will hear it only after 40 minutes because Mars is so far off. Even with the speed of light, the signal travels. So I think these settlers will have to evolve separately and they have to fend for themselves. The help will arrive from Earth, but it'll take a couple of days. And even advices, even any sort of advice that the Earthlings can give the Martians will be 40 minutes delayed, and by the time they can take action, so nothing is instantly available as a help to Martians in those days. So I think that is going to evolve as totally different in a different paradigm, not like Earth. That is why I'm raising these pertinent questions. How the economy would be. Will they form their own economic methods? We have a taxation system. Will they evolve something else? We don't know. Education, for example, education will totally they don't need to study what we study on Earth. They need to study something else which is relevant for them. So I think these are the things that we need to answer. uh, First settlers have a very clear target. They need to get there and build their roads. But I think generations after that will be slightly confused. They have to evolve. So I think they will become part of the evolution process.
Oh, you're absolutely right. But as we're saying, and this is where the education system is fundamental to that, because it needs to be, we need to be teaching what's relevant for the environment. And equally, we need to have laws relevant for the environment. We need to have lawmakers relevant for the environment. When we're on Mars, every person there is using resources. The first settlers will be breathing what we're breathing, because otherwise they'll die. We're not gonna change our appearance that much in this short period of time. So we will need to be breathing in air similar to we have today. But apart from that, everything else would need to change. So I think that the message that I would have today is your environment. What are you doing to make sure that your environment is what you need to have your environment to be? So, from a business owner, are you doing everything you need to be doing to make sure your business succeeds? Because you're using the resources of your business. I mean, you might call it income today. So, equally, are we using the resources of the planet? And individually, we need to be asking that. I'm not talking about, the climate issues that we've got around the world, but fundamentally, everything that we do here either shortens, lengthens, or keeps the life of the planet the same. And I think we should be asking those questions today, frankly, not for what's going to happen on Mars. I think we should be asking the questions of, is everything around me fit for purpose today? Should I be getting rid of my petrol or diesel car and going electric because that's the right thing to do? Whether you can afford it or not, that's a separate issue. But the thing is, we need to be assessing where we are today. What is our position today? And if we were to create and go and help a very remote village in India, in anywhere in Asia, Africa, what would we be doing to help them? How would we be structuring that help? Remembering that we're only there for a short period of time and it's them that have to live there. It's the self-sufficiency of their local community. What would we be doing? What would we be teaching? What knowledge would we be transferring into those areas? And when we start to ask those questions, the answers may be tough to come up with, but they'll be the right answer. And I think this is where we can start today. And by thinking of Mars, what's going to happen on Mars? Where are we going to go after Mars? What's that community going to look like? Will indeed parents be parents as we know them today? Who knows? But as they say in certain old proverbs, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely, Neville. I think uh, this is a very interesting subject, and I would request viewers to, engage with us, send their comments, and there could be many things that we have not discussed. I think it's a huge subject. Maybe, as Neville is suggesting, that we must try in our own environment, like you said. If there is a village, we need to make them self-sufficient. It could be a good experiment for all of us to prepare ourselves to Mars. And obviously, the first settlers will not be left alone. We have to, support them. They are going there for the humanity, for the cause of humanity. So I think these are certain things that we need to, discuss as a common society. And I request viewers to engage with us, send their comments, and we will bring you live with Naval Gund in the next episode of our discussion. So thank you so much, Naval, for today.
My pleasure, CK. And come on, folks, let's create our own little village. Let's have our village discussion. and see just exactly where this village takes us.
Thank you so much, Neville, and we will catch up next week with you once again on something more interesting.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.